Dane Kessler stepped onto the powdery surface of Varellus 9, boots sinking slightly into fine, silver-gray dust. The air around him shimmered faintly in the high radiation, a visual trick of the planet's thin atmosphere and the unfiltered glare of its white sun. Behind him, the shuttle hissed and powered down, its engines finally giving way to the surrounding silence. A silence so complete it seemed to press against his skull. He stood still for a moment, letting the quiet consume him. It had been 16 days since he left the last human outpost, and twice that long since he spoke to another person. Not that there was anyone left to talk to, not after the tribunal. The stain of failure still clung to him, the whispers following even into the stars. Out here, there was no judgment, no eyes watching, just distance, and the strange, jagged horizon of a world no one cared to claim. He shouldered his pack, turning toward the rise in the distance. The structure loomed out of the ground like the cracked shell of something long dead, a massive arc of obsidian metal half buried in a dune of time. It was no human design. The curvature, the gleam, the odd inscriptions along the outer walls. All wrong, all too precise, too fluid. It had taken him 3 months of obsessive research and 4 hacked datasets to even locate the coordinates. Most people believed the outpost was a myth, or worse, a cautionary tale. Now, standing before its yawning entrance, Dane knew 2 things for certain. It was real, and he was very much alone. The circular doorway responded to his proximity. As he approached, soft pulses of blue light flickered into life, rippling outward along etched lines. The metal dilated soundlessly, folding away like petals retreating into a stem. A brief gust of cool, sterile air brushed his face. Something inside still worked. He hesitated. "This is it," he muttered, mostly to himself. His voice sounded small against the void. Stepping inside, he entered a corridor unlike any he'd seen. It was vast, almost cathedral-like in its scale, but without any clear support structure. The walls were smooth and curved upward, meeting overhead in a translucent arch through which he could see the blue-white sun dimming as it began to fall. A glow emanated from thin seams in the walls, pulsating slowly, like breath. The air smelled faintly metallic, like ozone or old electronics. He walked forward, trailing his hand along the wall. The surface was cool, not metal, not stone, something in between. His gloved fingertips tingled slightly when they touched it, as if the structure recognized him, or at least acknowledged his presence. 10 meters in, he passed what looked like remnants of a camp. A rusted support frame, a torn emergency blanket, a cracked tablet with its screen long dead. He knelt beside it, brushing away the dust. The logo on the side, ESA, Earth Systems Alliance, was nearly worn off. So someone had been here before, maybe even recently. But there were no footprints, no fresh markings, only silence. The deeper he went, the more the light changed. The soft blue gave way to a pale green glow as he descended a spiral ramp. Every step echoed like it had a story to tell. The silence no longer felt empty. It had weight now, expectation. And then he saw it. The chamber opened suddenly, a vast circular room at least 30 meters across. At its center sat a sphere, floating 3 feet off the ground, slowly rotating. It pulsed with the same green light, but brighter, more urgent. The walls of the chamber were covered in what looked like script, lines of symbols that ran in flowing, concentric rings. They moved, not like scrolling text, but as if the wall itself was shifting slightly beneath them. Dane approached the sphere slowly, heart hammering. His fingers twitched with the urge to touch it, to understand. But he stopped just short, aware of the prickling at the back of his neck. He wasn't alone. He turned sharply, eyes scanning the edges of the chamber. Nothing moved. No sound. Still, something lingered, a presence, like the moment before a storm breaks. He exhaled and stepped back. Setting up camp near the entrance took less than 20 minutes. He kept it minimal. Heating module, water recycler, a cot. The bare essentials. He didn't plan on sleeping much. Not yet. Night fell quickly outside, though the concept of night was relative on a moon with a 47-hour rotational period. From the entrance, he watched the distant stars bloom into clarity, no atmosphere to blur their light. Dane sat with his back against the outpost wall, tablet in hand, logging notes. Structure is intact. Air is breathable with filtration. No fauna or flora observed. No signs of recent habitation, but clear evidence of prior presence by Earth Systems Alliance personnel. He paused, then added, discovered central sphere emitting low-frequency radiation, possibly some kind of core or memory device. He stopped the recording, closing his eyes. He wasn't a believer, not in the supernatural, not in fate. But the outpost, there was something about it. Something just at the edge of perception, like a dream you're about to remember. The next morning, he went back. There were no footprints. His from the day before had vanished. Wind, the dust shifting? Inside the core chamber, the sphere had stopped rotating. Dane approached again. This time, he reached out. The moment his fingers brushed the surface, heat flared across his skin. Not burning, but enveloping, like sunlight on flesh after years in the dark. Images, no. Impressions flashed behind his eyes. Soaring structures, a sky lit by 3 moons, voices that spoke in harmonic waves. None of it made sense, and yet his mind struggled to hold on to it. He fell back, gasping. The sphere hummed now, a steady pulse like a heartbeat. Around the chamber, the symbols on the wall began to glow, synchronizing in rhythm. Dane stumbled to his feet. The presence he'd felt the day before was no longer lurking. It was here, with him, watching. Then, a sound, a voice, maybe, not spoken aloud, but imprinted directly into his thoughts. You are not the first. He froze. The voice was not human, and yet not alien in the way he expected. It was layered, echoing in 1,000 tones, male and female, old and young, ancient and immediate. Who are you? He asked aloud. The chamber dimmed. The sphere grew brighter. The walls shifted slightly. You seek to start over, but you carry the old world within you. His breath caught. Somehow it knew. I didn't come for redemption. You came for silence. But even silence remembers. The lights in the chamber flickered. Dane backed away slowly, heart pounding. The sphere still dimmed. The symbols on the walls faded to inert carvings once more. He turned and left, climbing back through the winding corridors to the surface. Outside, the sun was rising again, casting a pale light across the jagged rock fields. He stood there, looking back at the doorway, still open, still glowing faintly. He had found what he was looking for, but it was no longer clear if he would ever leave. And somewhere deep in the walls behind him, the pulse of the sphere began again.
The days passed without markers. Dane had stopped keeping count. There was no sunrise or sunset inside the outpost, only the ever-present, pulsating light that shifted color without logic, sometimes amber, sometimes violet, sometimes a hue he couldn't name. He had explored 3 more levels beneath the core chamber, each stranger than the last. Corridors led to rooms that seemed to defy physics, angled in ways that distorted perspective, where sound moved sluggishly and the air hummed with pressure. He could no longer trust his senses. The sphere in the core room had not spoken to him again, but its presence lingered like a second heartbeat. Dane felt it even in his sleep, if what he did could be called sleep. Dreams came, vivid and unrelenting, full of sounds and shapes that weren't his own. An ocean of light, a chorus of beings whose faces were all slightly wrong, slightly mirrored. A sky where language rained down like water. He stopped trying to decipher them. He simply recorded. Each morning, or what he believed to be morning, he returned to the core. He spoke to the sphere, even when it was silent. Sometimes it responded, but never directly. It showed him memories, visions stitched into his thoughts. A great city, now submerged beneath ice. An alien child holding a glowing shard. A war that had no victor, only ruin. It was learning him, piece by piece. He sat in one of the observation alcoves, legs folded beneath him, hands clasped. The walls shimmered faintly, reflecting his outline but with a half-second delay, as if reality itself lagged behind him in this place. He tried not to look directly at his reflection anymore. It moved differently now. He spoke aloud. "What do you want from me?" No response. "Why show me these things?" Still nothing. Only the hum of distant machinery or thought. He couldn't tell the difference anymore. Back in his makeshift camp, he studied one of the alien tablets he'd recovered from a locked chamber 2 levels down. It wasn't a tablet in the human sense. It had no screen, no buttons. Just a flat panel with flowing ridges. Yet when he touched it, his fingertips grew warm, and an image bloomed in his mind like a remembered memory. This time, it was a conversation, two beings exchanging ideas not through words, but resonance, through harmonized pulses. They seemed to be arguing, their vibrations misaligned. Something about containment, preservation. One of them wanted to shut everything down. The other insisted on waiting. Dane pulled his hand back. He exhaled shakily. You knew the end was coming, he murmured. And you chose to leave yourselves here. Frozen. Why? A faint sound echoed from the corridor. Not the hum, not the silence. A scrape. He rose quickly, hand reaching instinctively for the tool on his belt. He had converted it from a maintenance scanner to a low-frequency shock baton, more psychological comfort than actual defense. But it steadied him. He moved toward the sound, keeping to the wall. Another scrape. Closer. Dane turned the corner and found nothing. Just the corridor stretching out, its floor marked with his own boot prints, distorted now, as if melted. The pulse of the walls seemed faster, nervous. And then it came again. Not a scrape. A breath. He spun. At the far end of the corridor stood a figure. It wasn't human. It was vaguely humanoid, tall, elongated limbs, no visible eyes, only a smooth, silvered surface where a face should be. It stood motionless, arms at its sides, as if waiting. Dane didn't move. His heart hammered, his mouth dry. The figure raised a hand. Not a threat, not a weapon, just a gesture. Slow. Intentional. Are you real? Dane asked. No answer. The figure turned and walked away, its movement fluid, like walking through water. It passed into the wall. Not through a door, not through an opening. Just into it. Dane stared at the spot for a long time, unsure if he was breathing. Back at the core, he demanded answers. You didn't tell me there were others here. The sphere pulsed softly. Warmer now. Almost sympathetic. You said I wasn't the first, he continued. Were they human? Or was that one of you? The symbols along the walls lit again. Faster this time. Urgent. Dane closed his eyes as the wave of images returned, this time sharper, more vivid. A council of beings encircling the sphere. The same debate. Extinction or dormancy. A vote. Then silence, and the shutting of light. A whole species folding itself inward to wait out time. And a visitor. Human. Not long ago. A woman. She stood where Dane stood now. She reached into the sphere, and something went wrong. A rupture. A scream without sound. Dane's eyes opened, gasping. She didn't make it, did she? The sphere dimmed. A long, low tone sounded through the chamber. Regret, if such a thing could be voiced in sound. Dane rubbed his face, disoriented. He wasn't sure if what he saw was real, or just the outpost replaying fragments. He couldn't even be sure if he was the same man who landed here. But he knew this. Something was awakening. Slowly, perhaps reluctantly, but undeniably. He climbed back to the upper levels, his thoughts racing. If the woman was from Earth Systems Alliance, why weren't there records of her? Had they buried the truth? Or had she never returned? Dane reached the outer chamber, where the airlock had first greeted him. A thin mist hung in the doorway now, visible only when backlit by the rising glare of the moon's sun. He stepped through, out into the cold. The landscape had changed. Not physically, no. The rocks and spires still jutted from the ground like alien teeth, but it felt different. As if the outpost had shifted something in the world around it, made the planet breathe again after a long dormancy. A whisper danced at the edge of the wind. His name. Not aloud. Not external. But he heard it. He turned, eyes narrowing at the silhouette of the structure behind him. I'm not going to run, he said to it. There was a kind of answering stillness. That night, he slept uneasily. He dreamed of the figure again. Not walking this time, but standing beside him in the core room. Watching. Waiting. It reached out a hand, and Dane hesitated. But instead of pulling back, he took it. The dream ended there. But the sensation lingered into waking, a strange warmth in his palm, and the knowledge that the line between dream and reality was thinning. He returned to the chamber before dawn. The sphere floated higher now. The walls of the chamber had shifted, subtle changes in angles, surfaces smoothed, symbols rearranged. Dane stepped forward. "What are you becoming?" he asked. "What you are ready to receive." The voice again, inside his head.
Clearer now.
Not many voices layered into one, but singular. Focused. "You're waking up," he said. "Because you are." He frowned. "What does that mean?" The sphere pulsed, and this time, there were no visions. No images. Only feeling, a tidal wave of it.
Fear.
Loneliness. Purpose. A sense of something ancient curling around his thoughts. It wasn't malicious, but it was vast. Dane staggered back. "You're not just technology," he whispered. "You're alive." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was acknowledgement. Dane exhaled, long and slow. He sat down cross-legged, facing the sphere. He was no longer here to colonize or to escape. He was here to witness. And somewhere deep inside the outpost, doors began to open.
Dane stood in the opening doorway, breath misting in the cold air of the alien outpost. The pulse of the structure had intensified over the last cycle. Each corridor, now subtly alive, its surfaces reacting to his presence. They no longer simply lit up or displayed symbols. They shifted with intention, realigning their geometry, offering him paths he had never noticed. The sphere in the core had not spoken again, but its silence was different now, watchful, anticipatory, like a held breath. Something was coming. He stepped into a chamber he hadn't explored before. The walls were smoother here, almost translucent, and for a moment he saw his reflection in every surface. 100 versions of himself, all watching, all subtly wrong. The room seemed to know he was there. Ridges along the floor lit with a gentle white glow, guiding him toward a pedestal at the center. On it lay a shard, iridescent, angular, humming quietly. He reached out, hesitated. His palm hovered above it, warm with static. It wasn't fear that held him back, it was reverence. This piece, whatever it was, pulsed with memory. Not just information, but awareness. When his fingers finally touched it, a deep sound echoed in his mind. Not a voice, but a sensation, a signal tuned perfectly to his consciousness. Images bloomed, not like before. These weren't fractured memories of another race's past. These were recent. Himself arriving, speaking, questioning, but also changing. He saw his body standing still while a second form, light-born, shimmering, emerged from his chest and walked toward the sphere. He saw himself dissolve into that glow. Then it cut to black. Dane jerked back. The shard dropped to the floor, yet it didn't make a sound. It simply hovered there, gently rotating. He stepped away, shaken. "I don't want to be rewritten," he muttered. But even as he said it, he knew that line had long been crossed. He returned to the core. The sphere was waiting, but it had split open, revealing a lattice of light within, a living constellation. It pulsed slowly, in time with his own breath. He stood before it, trembling slightly. Not from fear, from the gravity of what he was beginning to understand. "You're not just a record," he said aloud. "You're a seed." A ripple passed through the sphere, and for the first time, it emitted something physical, a single point of light that floated toward him and hovered just before his chest. Dane's instinct screamed to move, to run. But he didn't. The light entered him. There was no pain, only expansion, a sudden, overwhelming sense of connection. He could feel the outpost's architecture, its dormant machinery, the data ghosts embedded in its walls. He could feel the memory of the civilization that built it, their joy, their failure, their sacrifice. And at the core of it all, a need to survive through communion. The outpost wasn't a bunker. It was an invitation. He felt at his knees, gasping. His skin tingled, his vision blurred, refocused. He could see deeper into the spectrum now, colors he had no names for. He could hear the language of the stone, the low-frequency hum of metal shaped by thought. Dane rose different. The system recognized him now. Doors opened before he approached. Rooms changed to accommodate his presence. In one, he found stasis pods, rows of them, most dormant, but a few blinking with error codes. In another, a gallery of alien anatomy, shifting displays adapting to match human physiology. Not experiments, preparations. They were expecting someone like him. He accessed more memory shards, cautious now. Each one expanded his awareness. He learned of the event, the final war that broke their world. Not a war of violence, but of philosophy. A schism between those who believed in separation and those who believed in fusion. The latter group had built this outpost, seeded it with potential, waiting for compatible species. They had gambled on humanity, and humanity had forgotten them. Dane stood in the map room. Holograms floated around him, stellar charts updated by the outpost's limited long-range sensors. One system pulsed brighter than the others. A human system, not Earth, but a fringe colony. A new frontier. They were in danger. The outpost had been transmitting warnings, he realized. Quiet pulses sent through subspace channels long forgotten by Earth Systems Alliance. But no one had answered. Until him. He touched the colony's marker. A new signal flared, coordinates now accessible. The outpost was preparing something. A transport? A communication beam? He didn't know, but he understood the choice he was being offered. Stay and complete the transformation. Become the bridge between species, the inheritor of forgotten knowledge. Or leave and carry that knowledge back, imperfect, filtered through a mind not designed for it. Dane walked the corridor one last time. The ghost figure was there again at the far end. This time, it did not vanish. It watched him. Then, slowly, it raised a hand, pointing toward a door that hadn't existed before. He followed. Beyond it lay a small chamber with a single chair, sleek, angular, designed for something with a different spine, but adaptable. Screens activated. Energy built. A ship. Small, personal. Not meant for war, but for contact. He stepped inside. The systems lit instantly. They knew him now. The outpost whispered its farewell, not with words, but with sensation. Pride. Hope. A final gift. The ship rose, silent and smooth, into the alien sky. The surface of the moon fell away beneath him, its geometry shifting one last time to hide the outpost from unworthy eyes. As the atmosphere thinned and stars burned bright through the viewport, Dane looked down, then forward. He was no longer alone. He was no longer just human. And somewhere ahead, humanity waited, unaware, unready, but not unreachable.